Stella, please, can we take the second stanza as our opening prayer, please? 1, 2, go. O God of creation, direct our noble call. How lead us right, ever use the truths to know. In love and honesty to grow and live just and true. Great lofty heights attain to build the nation where peace and justice shall reign. Thank you very much. Let's be seated.
Thank you very much, sir. Then we now call on the Registrar Chief Executive of our institute, Madam Oluwatoyin, FCIPM, to please read out the Code of Conduct.
Can we please rise? Good morning, everyone. All protocols duly observed. We shall be reading our Code of Conduct, and you'd read after me. And where we get to your name, you'd insert your name. The Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria.
The Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria,
as the apex regulatory body for human resources management practice in Nigeria,
as the apex body for human resource management in Nigeria,
is committed to the highest possible standards of professional conduct,
is committed to the highest possible standards of professional conduct
and competency amongst its members.
Amongst its members.
Therefore, as a member of the institute,
I, MCIPM,
pledge that I shall at all times carry out my duties and responsibilities with integrity and diligence. Demonstrate competence and ethical behavior in all my business. Professional and personal activities. Respect the laws of the land. Promote, encourage, and place acceptable processes. And procedures in the practice of human resources management. Within my sphere of influence. Endeavor to make personal decisions. After considering all options, of which resignation may be one. In defense of this code of conduct. Where there are conflicts between my professional obligations. And expectations of my job role. So help me God. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. At this point, we'll be inviting the President and the Chairman of Governing Council, Mr. Olusegun Moji, FCIPM. So please give us the welcome address.
Thank you, Madam Coordinator, MC, Stella Obialo. Let me especially say thank you and for doing that very good job in Edo State a few weeks ago for the Institute. We appreciate what you do for the Institute. Thank you so much. And I'll quickly go to, what do we call this? A welcome address.
Yes, sir.
To start with, I want to say welcome everyone. Today's, as at the last call, I think I saw the figure earlier on. And I want to appreciate everyone connecting to this online. Let me quickly say that up front. I want to say thank you for being here. And one thing I can tell you that your time is not wasted for being here with us. The Vice President, Mr. Henry Onuapo, MCIPM, the National Treasurer, Mrs. Chidima BJC, MCIPM, the Registrar, Chief Executive. Wow, this is about the first time I'm saying that. After a long time. So, ladies and gentlemen, we want to especially welcome our Registrar, Chief Executive, Ms. Toyin Naiwo, FCIPM, into our midst. The immediate past president, Mr. Wale Adediran, FCIPM. Distinguished fellows on this call, fellows of our great institute. Our guest speaker for today, Mrs. Tolulope Agiri, MCIPM, a committed member of our great institute. And I hope that people will begin to see the advantage of the virtual world we are in now, because I know where Tolulope is connecting from. By now in that climb, they should be sleeping. But he's here. She's here with us this morning, and we sincerely appreciate you. Council members here present, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm so glad to welcome you to the 2022 Annual Public Lecture. I appreciate you all for being with us today. As you know, your institute, the CIPM, our public lecture is a free learning platform set aside by the institute to discuss topical issues in the human resources profession and to help HR professionals position themselves. As the apex and the only management and regulatory body for the practice of HR in our land, one of our objectives is to develop the science and practice of people management in all its ramifications. Taking us down the memory lane, ladies and gentlemen, back to the year 2020, we can all attest beyond every reasonable doubt that it was a year like never before. It was a year that redefined everything, and it was a year that gave us a new meaning to how we conduct our work and our workplaces. But as emotional beings, adapting to change takes place at different paces for everyone. The learning curve is different from person to person. And so the lecture today is to bring us up to speed with the realities of the now normal. And as the proverbial phrase goes, when life throws you lemons, you make lemonade out of it. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be making lemonades. I am particularly excited about the theme, hybrid work, upskilling the digital acceleration, which will be delivered by a highly distinguished HR professional in the person of Mrs. Tolulope Agiri, MCIPM, Deputy Director and Head of Human Resources, International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, that's what I call that, based in Montreal, Canada. In addition, ladies and gentlemen, we have present esteemed professionals on our panel, and they will weigh in on the subject matter and provide a multi-sectoral perspective. I welcome Nasir B. Salisu, MCIPM, Assistant General Manager, Intelligence and Enforcement Kano Electricity Distribution Company, KEDCO, and Dr. Emmanuel Okeleji, Chief Executive Officer, Seamless HR. Thank you. A very big thank you to our guest speaker and the panelists for taking time out of your busy schedule to share your wealth of experience. As we all know and have come to accept, digital is a new way of life. As HR professionals, ladies and gentlemen, we need to extract the value out of IT systems and ensure that data-driven information reaches those who need it, when they need it, and in whatever form they need it. Automating as many workflows as possible allows for digital acceleration within and across systems, functions, and geographies. The reality check is that it is time to trade old habits for a new spirit of responsibility. As doing nothing will lead to dire consequences, the old habits can never take us to where we are destined to be. So don't just be present, but be attentive. Let us be fully present in class today so that we can take home some good and quality learning. Don't let us suffer from presenteeism, the art of being there and not being here. Please let us pay attention. I'm pleased to quickly use this medium to inform you that the 54th International Conference and Exhibition, tagged ICE 2022, themed Leading People, Growing Nation, is coming up in Port Harcourt at the Obiwali International Conference Center from Monday, the October 17th to Friday, the October 21st. It promises to be a gathering filled with wholesome learning experiences, networking opportunities, and fun. As we gather in the Garden City, ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to seeing you there. If you have not registered, please do so now at cipmnigeria.org/conference. In closing, I want to thank everyone today who has made this a success. Our Institutional Development Committee, I can't forget to thank the IDC, led by Mrs. Princess, of course, Olubusola Abidakun, MCIPM, one of the brand new latest permanent secretaries in the Lagos State Civil Service. We celebrate you always. And of course, our HQ team, the backbone, the engine room of our great institute, led by the newly appointed Registrar Chief Executive, Ms. Oluwatoyin Aiwo, FCIPM. Thank you, leadership. Thank you, the Governing Council. Thank you all for your committed efforts towards the continued growth of our institute. Thank you for listening, and I wish you all a fruitful time today. God bless you all. God bless the CIPM. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We move. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Mr. President and Chairman of the Governing Council. So without further ado, kindly permit me to do the honors of ushering in a very distinguished keynote speaker to help do justice to this topic. So before I read her profile, whenever I see this amazing lady, 4 things come to my mind: experience, expertise, finesse, and panache. So I'll be reading her profile right now. So Tolulope Agiri is the Deputy Director and Head Human Resources for the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO. ICAO is a United Nations specialized agency funded and directed by 193 national governments to support their diplomacy and cooperation in air transport as signatory states to the Chicago Convention. Tolu is an experienced HR executive with almost 3 decades HR consulting and practice experience across industries and nationalities. Is known for her authentic and passionate approach to aligning human resources to business. She worked with KPMG Nigeria before joining Unilever in several HR roles across Nigeria, Africa, the Middle East, and Turkey. She left Unilever as the HR director, Nigeria, to join the United Nations World Food Programme as regional head of human resources for the Southern African Bureau, with oversight for driving HR strategy and operations across the Southern African countries. Prior to joining the ICAO, Tolu also worked as the Group CHRO at InterSwitch Group, a pioneer and leader in digital payments in Africa. Tolu graduated from the University of Lagos with an MSc in Industrial Relations and Personnel Management, and from the Obafemi Awolowo University with a BSc in Psychology. She's a member of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, where she has been involved in various roles and committees, including conference committees and the Strategic Planning and Implementation Committee. She's a thought leader and a sought-after conference speaker. Tolu is happily married to Abayomi, and they are blessed with two young adult children, Ife Oluwapo and Oluwatimileyin. She's passionate about developing the next generation of leaders and mentoring young women. You all can see why I'm a huge fan of this lady. So, ladies and gentlemen, please with a round of applause, let us usher in our keynote speaker. Ma'am, the floor is yours. Kindly unmute. Yeah, you're muted. Ma'am, can you unmute yourself, please? Oh, you're unable to.
I've done it now. I've done it now.
Great, great, great.
Wow. Good morning, colleagues. All protocols duly observed. I must say I'm very humbled to be here this morning, but also very excited at the topic before us this morning. Good morning, good afternoon to colleagues joining from all over the world, because that's something that digital has given us. That's something technology has given us, because you never really know where people are joining you from. So good morning, good afternoon to colleagues from all over the world. I've got a couple of minutes to share thoughts about the topic. And I would, by God's grace, be able to touch down on time so that we can have questions. Okay, so it's hybrid work, upskilling for digital acceleration is the topic before us. Trying to just set myself up very nicely. Okay, so to give me context to this, I engaged a couple of young people, but those young people are the young people that live in my house, actually. My young adult children who themselves have been doing this for a while. So I'm going to make reference to them. I'm also going to, there is a lot of reference to research work. And as much as possible, I have included the reference on the set pages. Again, just so that, you know, we're all on the same page. Hybrid, digital acceleration are terms that have become more common very recently. And as it is with the COVID vaccine, if I may use that example, some of these new things will take time to emerge and be tested. The reason a number of people were unwilling to go for the vaccine was simply because they didn't think that enough testing had been done to get it ready. Hence, even the world of hybrid and digital acceleration will have its own test. I will just set myself up with a timer here. 35 minutes. Cool. Okay. To do this morning, I would first of all talk about hybrid, talk about impact of hybrid, then dig into using digital to enable hybrid, and then I'll talk a bit more about building your hybrid framework, and I will share some concluding thoughts. To take a leaf from what the president had said earlier, there is a lot of work that has gone into accelerating organizations digitally. And also a lot of work has gone into setting up hybrid. I will spend some time on both sides of the divide, but as time goes on, you will see where I have chosen to really dig into, and essentially because I'm looking at the audience, the likely audience, because again, I don't know, and what each person may be looking to take home from today. Usually at sessions like this, the spectrum of attendees will go from very mature organizations to organizations that are just trying. And I hope that I have been able to sort of profile it right the way I go here. So first of all, let's do hybrid. I may not be able to see in the chat box, but I do want to ask a question, and I'm going to ask Madam Moderator to help me check the chat box. How many organizations worked hybrid before the pandemic? I mean, I just want you to give us some feelers in the chat room if your organization was working hybrid before the pandemic. So I don't know why hands are raised, but I'm wondering whether people can just type in the chat room. I'm not seeing any movement, so I'm going to assume that nobody has really typed anything, but I think it's safe to say that before the pandemic, hybrid was not a big thing. In a lot of organizations, going to work was normal. Of course, in tech companies, the conversation had started about remote, but in real terms, hybrid was not commonplace before pandemic. And therefore, even though pandemic brought the lemons, what has happened over time is that we've been able to squeeze the lemonade out of it. And I start with that point, I think, because of the slide that I'm going to next, which is really speaking to what happened when pandemic sort of showed itself. Yeah, so a couple of things happened as the world went on lockdown and commerce had to continue. So emergence of different directions and different ways of working. I had put this particular slide together, I think 2 years ago, or maybe sometime last year, to have a conversation with our leadership, because we were grappling with the organization I was working for then. We were grappling with the different versions and what exactly we were to do. And I thought it would be a good place to start the conversation, especially for people on the call who may be in a valley of decision as organizations. And I know quite a number of Nigerian organizations are still there. People went from full remote to their organizations where full remote is a thing. And they've said you don't really have to come to work physically. Organizations are saying, well, maybe you need to come physically every day. So I once worked for an FMCG, and I was in touch with ex-colleagues during the pandemic. And what had happened was, even though the organization itself was not coming to work, some parts of the organization had to come to work. Otherwise, there would be no OMO and there would be no KNOR. And that was itself a risk already. So there were some parts of the organization that couldn't do remote. And then emerged this thought around, maybe we can have a hybrid, maybe we can have a bit of this and a bit of that. But there were also organizations that said, actually, this has triggered a thought in us, and we will be an on-site first organization. In other words, we will design our organization such that you will work from the office, except you are not allowed, except there's a situation that doesn't allow you to. But on the reverse, there were other organizations that, as a result of what was happening, were also saying, we will be remote first. And I share an example of such organizations as I go down the slides. In other words, we don't call it hybrid, we call it remote first, because that's what we want. We want our organizations to be remote first, and then you go to work if you need to. And there were organizations that did a combo of full remote for a specific group or a specific caterer. There were organizations, and we were almost there in my former organization, where remote was only for employees that had to be out of the country for a certain amount of time. And then there were others that said actually we're just remote on needs basis. So, and I'm sure as you dig into the subject of hybrid, you will get more and more variants in terms of, you know, a bit of this and a bit of that, and exactly what is it that it's looking at. One of the thoughts that I will end with is splashed on this page, and it speaks to the fact that no two organizations are the same, but I'll move on. I wouldn't go there yet. So just to ensure that we're on the same page, a hybrid work model is the blending of in-office and remote. And for some people, it means that every employee has those two options. For some organizations, it means that some people in the organization have one option and other people have the other option. A bit of this and a bit of that is what makes it hybrid. There's certain dependencies building a hybrid organization. There's certain dependencies that enable the subject of hybrid to be successful in organizations. And the first one, this one happens to be one, in my view, that not a lot of us look at. And the first one is, what is your job? What is the primary job of the organization? And does that job allow for you to be remote? What is the job of the organization? You then bring it down. What are the jobs in the organization? Do you understand the jobs enough to know whether or not they can be done virtually? The truth is, no matter how sexy or sophisticated we make the subject of hybrid, not everybody can be hybrid. Hybrid will not be for everybody. There will be organizations that it will be better for them to actually continue to work traditionally, even though the shape of work has changed. So what portion of jobs? I seem to have an echo. If you could please help me check that. Madam Moderator, I seem to have an echo online. So if you could just help me check that, please. So what is the job? And understanding of the job helps you to then put a design forward as far as your own organization is concerned. Do you have the infrastructure to support this? Infrastructure in this regard, speaking to the common ones, where you refer to is your intranet set up to support staff offline, but also your security. Do you have the security that can exist and survive outside the four walls of your organization? And can you afford to set everybody up? I mentioned the fact that I had spoken to my kids about this topic earlier. And I remember when my son was starting his internship, as part of his degree work, his organization sent him by post his the laptop and the screen, the extra screen he was meant to use because of wide spreadsheets. If your organization is not set up to set your employees up to work remotely, then the question of hybrid doesn't even arise. Because if people will not be able to do their work from home, especially if you don't bring your own device, then it becomes an issue. You have to just confirm that your infrastructure is set up. Now, this subject has become one of interest for me because of the space I'm in right now in the organization that I work for. Performance management must be settled in the context of hybrid. And as much as employee experience is key, and it's probably one of the buzz phrases right now, the truth is there will be no employee without the business. So if you set up hybrid and hybrid does not work, there may not be a business, because if it's not working, there's no work. So set up what success means now. What does success mean for the job that needs to be done from home? What does it mean? Use both leading and lagging measures just to ensure that you don't get to the end of it and discover nothing has happened. And very importantly, train line managers on managing this change. The truth is, this is a change. The way that you and I manage transformations when we have transformations happening in our organization is the same way that this realm of hybrid and using digital to drive it should be managed. There was a point here that I forgot to mention. If your organization is driving hybrid, for equity's sake, are you able to reward or grant the guys that cannot work remotely, grant them an exception of sorts? So if your organization is driving hybrid working and you are able to set people up to work in a hybrid fashion, they can work from home or work from the office. What about the individuals, the employees that cannot work from home? So what I know that some organizations have done is to actually reward them. And I say reward in inverted commas, because coming to work actually comes with its nuances and its attendant costs. So if you come to work every day, there's what you burn every day. There's the time you spend commuting every day. If you don't come to work, you save all that. But what happens to the person that needs to come to work every single day by virtue of the work they do? So what some organizations have done is to give this category of people what they call compensatory time off. In other words, because you don't have the luxury of avoiding commutes, you don't have the luxury of avoiding burning your fuel. And remember, in most developed countries, light is almost guaranteed. So if you are not doing all that, there should be something we give you back. So some organizations will say you can have a day every month where you actually don't have to come to work. And it's not part of your leave, just as a way of recognizing that you cannot work hybrid and others are working hybrid. And the last part that I'll refer to at this point, because I'll come to this content later, is to say that hybrid as it comes on board needs to be piloted. Because of the eventual impact it can have on the organization, on the results of the organization, you want to try and actually conduct a very controlled experiment. So even if your organization is 50 men, or it's a 50-man organization, you can actually conduct that controlled experiment in a way that helps you understand what are the implications of this thing we're trying to do. It is not the time to go with the Joneses and go hybrid because everybody is going hybrid. I will be a voice in my organization and even in the one I used to work in to say, it is great to be able to grant these privileges to employees, but please caution, caution, caution. Wait a minute, measure it to ensure that it's working. Because, let it not be that the job that 20 people were doing prior to pandemic, all of a sudden, you find yourself recruiting more people because you need more people to do it, because you haven't quite measured exactly what was happening. Now, I mentioned the issue of jobs earlier, and I stumbled on this research by McKinsey that I wanted to share, which was really saying the potential for remote work is determined by tasks and activities, not occupations. And what they've done here is to show, theoretically, the extent to which they think certain tasks can be done remotely. And they also show practically what they see as the real potential. So as an example, updating knowledge and learning as a task or an activity, they say 82 to 91% can be done remotely, but they also give examples of what can be done and what cannot be done. So a number of things on the screen may not be particularly relevant to the space you are in, but the principle is relevant. The fact that occupations is, it's not by occupation actually, it is by the actual tasks. So if you come here, communicating and establishing interpersonal relationships, again, they say that, of course, you can answer telephones to direct calls, but you cannot represent clients in legal proceedings. And again, the range, you can tell, is lower, much lower than what you have in the other job there. So it's a principle for you to just think about. Hybrid may be buzz right now, but it's not for everybody. Apart from the kind of job, I would even say, even the kind of people, the extent to which people are self-driven, one way or the other, will affect the effectiveness of hybrid. So what are the impacts we have seen? I put this up as an example. As tech companies announce plans for permanent remote work options, the median price of a one-bedroom rental in San Francisco dropped. While in New York City, which had roughly 28,000 residents in every square mile, 15,000 rental apartments were empty in September. So the point here is, and it's just an example, the point here is actually the impact of hybrid on employees, on the organization, is not going to be a simple matter. Actually, so the same way that we're still trying to understand the full variants of COVID, the full impact of COVID, the long-term effects of COVID, the long-term effects of the vaccine, so also hybrid. So the full impact of whether or not you work from the office or people work from home, that full impact, we are understanding it as we're going. And organizations are now, you know, they're known now to start to change what they started with because of what they can see is the emerging impact of this new way of work. So the new way of work, of course, should be embraced, but it should be embraced cautiously because actually there is nuance to it and there are different layers to it. Now, to add to that piece of research, is this one. I've got all kinds of things on my screen. I can't see my presentation well. Okay. Yeah. So, and this question was asked to, this piece of research is from Russell Reynolds and Associates. And this question was asked to business leaders in terms of what factors they felt will be affecting the health of business in the next 12 to 18 months. And what you can see here, of course, you can see the common culprits here already, but what has now emerged is business leaders themselves are saying hybrid will affect business. And the reason I make this point is, as an HR professional, one of the most important things for you to do is to understand and get into the mind of your CEO what keeps you awake at night. Because if your CEO in his mind is thinking hybrid will affect business, you should understand in what way he is thinking about it. I remember once I asked a manager of mine, what keeps you awake at night? It's one of those examples where the question went south because my manager replied me and said, actually, I sleep well at night. And I had to sort of change the direction of the questioning, but you know in principle what I mean. What keeps your business leader awake at night is important. So leaders are saying, 36% of them are saying return to work is emerging in 2022 as one of the factors that will affect business. In what ways though? Yeah. So what's the impact of remote and hybrid working on self? And here you start to see, based on what global leaders said, this is their perception. To what extent will it affect your connectivity with others? Well, more negative than positive if you look at the maths. To what extent will it affect your engagement with the organization? More negative than positive. To what extent will it affect your ability to lead a team successfully? More negative than positive. And again, they look at it even more broadly, because now you start to think about it from a culture perspective. To what extent will it affect the culture? Negative. To what extent will it affect collaboration? Negative. And you can see what else is on the screen. The point I'm trying to make here is to really stress the caution around hybrid. It is true. It is true that hybrid has actually come to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. This is the new way of work. However, if you don't have the right infrastructure in place and you have not paid attention to what may be going on in the businessman's mind, then maybe you are setting yourself up to fail. Maybe you are setting yourself up to fail, and you may want to just check that out. If I bring it all together in terms of what I see as the impact of hybrid, and I currently operate in a climate where it's a thing, and it is the thing, actually. Can you just confirm for me? I heard a sound now, not sure what's happening. Okay, I'm going to continue. So if you look at the impact of hybrid, the first thing, of course, is the fact that your employees are more engaged. They're more engaged from the perspective of happiness. So working, having flexibility to sort of pace yourself, to do what you want to do. When I was discussing this with my son and I asked him the question, because he has probably worked more from home than anything else. And he said, actually, when you work from home, the ability to create your own environment, it had never really occurred to me like that. To say you can, if you want to work in dead silence, you can do that. If you want to put music, you can do that. If you want natural light, you can do that. If you want dim light, you can do that. So all of a sudden, you've got employees who are, gingered because of the opportunities for flexibility that they have. And that in itself goes right down to productivity, and that's great. You've also got them affecting the climate positively, because when you come into the office, whenever you come into the office, because hybrid means you still have to come, when you come into the office, then you are probably more intentional in the way you try to engage people. You are more alive, and therefore it's good for climate. It's also good for workspaces. It's good for operational cost, quote and unquote. Because if I think about the environment in Nigeria and the fact that for an organization that was operating out of a number of buildings at some point with my previous employers, there was a period where we actually toyed with closing down some of the buildings because we didn't need to have those buildings open because of the number of people at work. So it can work very well for operational costs. However, what you will need to watch and to look after and to intentionally design for collaboration. To what extent are people going to collaborate without you being intentional about it? Someone said to me, a colleague in the UN said to me that they did a very informal study and they discovered that employees were now more, they felt closer to people that were working far away from them. In other words, because everything is now virtual, guys that are not within your vicinity, you have meetings with, and that's good. And people that are actually within your vicinity, maybe not as much. So collaboration is actually an area to watch. Culture is another area to watch. Culture is the way we do things around here. And the way we do things around here involves habits and values and observable behavior. The question is, to what extent will we be doing that with hybrid? So not to shut the door on hybrid, but to say, hey, Mr. HR manager, Mrs. HR manager, in pushing forward the kind of workspace that will attract talent for you, because a lot of people, LinkedIn says probably 1 out of 3 jobs now come up with the remote work option, and that's what employees are looking for. However, the way you intentionally then build your culture is something you have to think about. And I offer 1 or 2 examples later on. Now, burnout is another part of this. Burnout is not equal to productivity. Because what happens, and I can use myself as an example, is, of course, you have distractions at home. I don't know about you, I have distractions at home. So even though, I don't have the intercom ringing all the time for meetings or someone trying to call me, I do have distractions at home. But despite that, my laptop is open longer when I'm at home. So that's the burnout part. And it doesn't necessarily mean productivity. It just means because you're working from home, you almost want to compensate for, I didn't go to work. So, I just work longer, sort of. Of course, hybrid schedules and the fact that hybrid is not suitable for everybody. So these are some of the impacts of hybrid that you need to watch out for as you seek to do that in your organization. Now, how do we leverage digital for hybrid working? The KPMG, one of KPMG's leaders said, for a majority of US CEOs, the pandemic has meant an acceleration in digital transformation by months or even years. And I do have one or two words on that. The move to digitization has accelerated and the benefits will be permanent. There's no going back. Now, the question was asked to them, just to put some figures on this. The question was asked of leaders, and this data is still from KPMG. Across the following areas of enterprise digital transformation, please say what impact the pandemic has had on progress. So in every single area, pandemic has accelerated. The purple bar, the purple pie is acceleration, while the green bar is almost status quo. So in almost every single area, the pandemic has accelerated, and that's actually where the term digital acceleration is from, because it's not just about transformation, it is acceleration. So digital transformation, in the use of the word, refers to the use of digital technology to transform an organization, where you're thinking of not just the technology, but the data to drive decision. However, digital acceleration carries a similar meaning, but it emphasizes the idea of speed and continuity of the process. It takes a great goal of digital adoption and breaks it into smaller, more realistic goals that can be quickly achieved. So what we're talking about here is the fact that what has happened to the world in the last 2 years has created that platform for, you don't have 3 years anymore, what you have is 3 months, and you have to collapse everything you're doing into those 3 months. Now, how do you use digital to do this, and at what point? What you have in front of you is a picture of the employee life cycle. And to be fully optimized for a hybrid work setup, what we need to be thinking about, and I'm taking my quote right from the slide, is not a simple transformation, but a constant and continuous change that takes employees' experiences and feedback into account. That's digital acceleration. So in other words, you need to be auditing every point at which it's a moment that matters almost. And you need to be auditing that and infusing that with the data that matters and the technology that matters. And there's no area of this cycle that is void of opportunity, starting with when you're a candidate or when you are trying to attract candidates. What is the data saying to you at that point in terms of the candidates that are attracted to your organization, and what technology can you use to drive that? So if digital is where the world is going and hybrid is how people are working, when you want to engage candidates, you better be thinking of that. Be thinking of virtual interviews, be thinking of video interviews, be thinking of how to get the most from candidates, even when you're not with them physically. Then you move to your onboarding experience. And again, the process continues. How do you engage and onboard an employee and put design into their onboarding to ensure that actually they stay engaged, but digital is not left out of place? Then you go to the way you manage your team. And these are specific moments that matter in an employee's life. There are many more moments. So managing of teams, how do you ensure that digital actually elevates what is there? How do you ensure that the teams have the digital tools to manage themselves, to stay connected? So in a lot of organizations these days, Microsoft Teams is used, but the extent to which it's used is also questionable. So how do you ensure that the tools that you have invested in are actually being exploited at the moments that matter? Then you talk about training. And in training, there is a training bit of how do you train for digital? And I'll talk about that shortly. But there's also the training of employees. In the last 2 years, we have seen the migration from the traditional classroom to blended learning, more like. So where you're able to use online training together with video courses and whatever else you need to do with the classroom to give employees an experience. I remember attending a training, I think I referenced it the last time I spoke at CIPM. I remember attending a training in 2020, I think it was. It was an Oxford training for women in leadership, and probably one of the best courses I have ever attended. And I've attended a few. It was fully virtual, but it was so good and impactful. It didn't feel like I missed anything. So how do you create that environment for your employees such that learning can still be done irrespective of where you are? Is it by your LMS? Is it by you fusing into another LMS and ensuring that can happen? Then performance. Performance it has different aspects to it. There's the bit where the managers are able to manage performance virtually, but there's also the bit where employees are able to leverage the phone to ensure that performance is happening, where they're able to leverage the phone to ensure that recognition is also happening for people that deserve it. And then you've got your leave, your payroll, and all those data that need to be sitting in the cloud for your employees to be able to do that digitally. Then, of course, you've got operational things like your work travel, like your new role, and that, and that, and that. Many parts to this. Now, I give you an example here of how Dropbox as an organization, and I referred to this earlier, where we were talking about different kinds of virtual, different kinds of virtual. I referred to this earlier. So here, Dropbox say they're going virtual first, and of course they've got the toolkits that they pull together to ensure that their employees are really well engaged on the subject of digital. Now, one of the areas, I got distracted by my timer, but I can see that my timer has really gone. One of the areas that employers have to really watch out for in setting employees up for working hybrid and for using digital to drive it, a couple of areas. One of them, of course, is technology and communication, helping employees to develop the skills they need to operate in a hybrid environment, exposing employees to the tools that are available and exposing them to how to use those tools. A lot of us had these tools that are available before the pandemic hit, and we never did use them until the pandemic hit. But there's also the big topic around well-being and resilience, which is the employer supporting employees to work confidently in a rapidly changing environment. How do we ensure that both the managers and the employees understand the implications of burnout, understand the implications of you having your computer on 24/7? I remember that when we started working remotely during the lockdown, we couldn't go anywhere anyways, that I had to consciously say to my team, I happen to be a nocturnal person, but I'm not driving you to be nocturnal. So you can decide, you see my mail in the evening, you reply to it in the morning. And we had to say that for everybody's well-being, otherwise there would have been an issue. Performance management is referenced here again. I do have to rush. Now, there's emerging evidence on what is required to build a successful hybrid work environment. And some of them include your policy, you being clear, not just assume that it's going to work somehow. You need to be clear as an organization. You need to be clear what the principles are. One of the organizations I spoke to said that they decided to decentralize the decision on what was good into the teams. So even though they were very clear in terms of what was acceptable from a pot perspective, from the options perspective, they left it to the teams to decide how they wanted to work it. Now, one of the factors that helps when you're building your hybrid environment is to build predictability into it. Now, predictability says, I know when you're coming to work, and I'm able to plan for that, but it also allows for intentional connections, where you are ensuring maybe once a month, once in 2 weeks, once a week, there's a day that all of us come to work so that the connections can continue. You should pilot. You should spend time also building trust, because working hybrid with all the technology tools available still gives rise to some lack of trust. And here I share Brené Brown's model I'll go to it in the next slide. Of course, you need to empower management to do what management needs to do to make hybrid work. Now, one of the things that will lead to success is you being clear in your playbook of the different aspects of your hybrid. What's the policy? What are the options? What are the expectations from all parties? How do you manage it from a tools and tips perspective? Ensure it is iterative, it's not final, it will keep evolving. Make sure you include lessons learned. Ensure it's a central resource that brings everything together. It's a toolkit, it's a hands-on guide, and it helps line managers. Now, here are some tools. Here are some tools that organizations continue to use for different parts of managing hybrid. If it's from a collaboration perspective, there are quite a few. From a meetings perspective, there's quite a few, and you can avail yourself of this. And I want to speak, you know, established organizations usually have these things driven from the center, but there are also organizations who actually are just growing their thing. And if that's where you fall, you may want to explore some of this. Now, this is Breno Brown's model of on building trust and giving trust. And she breaks it down into tangibilities, because at times trust can be iffy, even though we say, yeah, you must earn it. But she refers to things around boundaries. And she's saying, you respect my boundaries. And when you're not clear about what's okay and not okay, you ask for it. Talks about vault. You don't share information or experiences that are not yours to share, just to ensure that when managers and employees are working hybrid, the issue of trust is not broken. It's a good resource to look at. I would wrap up in just a few minutes because I can tell I've run out of time. Now, having said that, one of the missing connects on the issue of hybrid and ensuring that digital drives it optimally is the issue of culture. At the end of, you know, the bottom line of it all is that this is indeed a culture change. It's a change to the way we do things around here. When you start to have meetings where some people are online and some people are physical, it's a change to the way we do things. When you start to have performance appraisal virtually, it's a change to the way we do things. So the way you and I would typically approach culture change is the way we should approach this. Otherwise, we'll be missing a link. Now, some concluding thoughts from me. I take this from Gartner. It says companies only offered about 4% of their roles as remote. The point I'm trying to make here is you will not be able to hybrid everything. That's the truth. There would always be, for most organizations, there would always be that part of the organization that can be hybrid. And then I take another thought from them. It says to remain competitive for talent, you should track the flexibility trends of critical roles. Remember, we talked about roles at the beginning. So which roles are open to being flexible? Just to ensure that you are not left behind and you have your competition stealing your talent because you refuse to be flexible. So you need to remain competitive and remain online, remain in touch so that you can know which jobs actually are getting flexible. And a couple more thoughts now. This research was done, I think, close to the time that COVID hit. And the question was asked of HR professionals, how would you describe your organization's ability to adapt to hybrid? And what you see here is about half of the population said they would describe, you know, their organizations as good or excellent. And the point I'm trying to make here is, to the HR manager on the call this morning, you can give yourself a pat on the back. Because the truth is, a lot of us are learning this thing as we are going. It's very similar to parenting. So nobody really gives you, you know, this is your backpack on parenting and that's it. There's nothing else to learn. It's not true. As you're going, as long as you remain open, you will learn it and you will do it. You will learn from others and you will be able to do something good for your organization. According to HR professionals, the top 3 technology challenges created by the shift to hybrid work are, the only one I'm going to is this one actually, because I really want to nail the point that hybrid cannot, you know, just be hybrid for hybrid's sake. Hybrid should be hybrid because it drives the bottom line at the end of the day. So finally for me, and I take a couple of these from Dave Ulrich, HR cannot be about HR. There's no HR if there's no business. So HR must understand what's driving the business. If you don't understand what's driving the business, then you are actually going to walk yourself into irrelevance. My number 2 point, there's no one size fits all. So if you really want to follow the Joneses, you are going to find yourself in a ditch. So what you need to do is to take a chill pill and understand your own context. Someone said, if content is king, then context is the kingdom. You need to understand your context so that once you get your context, then you can design the bespoke hybrid plan, matching it up with whatever digital tools that you decide to use at every point of the employee's life cycle. And this third point is also from Dave Ulrich. Value is not derived by what we do. So we don't jump on the hybrid train because everybody is doing it, but what others get. And others in this case has to include the employee, yes. It also has to include the shareholder. The shareholder should get value from us trying to drive digital. This was shared with me a couple of years ago by my then manager. And essentially it says, and it's a phenomenon I'm sure you're familiar with. I just like the way this model puts it. To say, even though this is where we're going, profitability, revenue growth, even NGOs, they have what they call their own profitability and revenue growth. It starts here. Employee satisfaction must be there. And that is what's driving a lot of the movements in hybrid, right? Now, if this is broken at this point, if this employee satisfaction is broken at this point, let me see if I can get my, no, I didn't get it. Okay, if employee satisfaction is broken at the point and it doesn't flow to revenue growth and profitability, you need to go back to the drawing board. That hybrid is not working for your organization, and you probably need to be rethinking it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and that's the end of my presentation. I stop sharing now.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. That was an expose. My goodness. I don't know about you guys, but my notes is filled up. My notes is filled up. Thank you very much, very, very erudite and distinguished keynote speaker. Yes, you have mentioned quite a lot, and please let's start dropping the questions on the chat box. We understand a few some moments ago we were unable to drop questions on the chat box. Let's see if it's possible. Let the questions come in. We have about 7 minutes to go through the question and answering session. And so you made mention about no two organizations are the same, so it's not no one size fits all, and that we should evaluate the work to see if evaluate to see the one that suits us the most. So we don't just go emulating one company because they are into hybrid without evaluating what the business you are into and see if all the roles, if hybrid can work for you. And again, not all the roles can operate on a hybrid. And again, you mentioned about reward. Well, it's true. At times I keep wondering how some other persons, because they said, oh, it's not all the roles that could be hybrid. So but what about those that come to work every day and the nuance that comes with commuting, and especially when they are, well, in the parts of Nigeria, fuel crisis, why some persons in the organization say, thank God, I'm not going to work, I'm working remotely, why others have to struggle to get to work. How do we reward them? Thank you very much. We talked about the hybrid playbook, hybrid model, how we as HR professionals need to be flexible, we need to be competitive, and we need to be agile to retain our talent. So I would like to start by asking these questions that what are the risks that are involved in hybrid work management, and how can we mitigate such risk as HR professionals?
Thank you. There are a couple of risks associated with this move, like most things that are good in life. One of the risks, I think, is information security. And as an organization, there has to be a very formal documented, rigorous process that enables the right firewalls, that triggers the right teams to know, whether you have been compromised or not. I've worked in an organization before where actually you couldn't use any you couldn't use any stick on your system. You couldn't copy anything. I've heard of organizations where you can't print certain documents, you can't send certain documents. So the organization has to really work out something, and if it's something you haven't thought about before, you may want to think about that very rigorously and put the adequate controls in place. The other risk though, and which is why I keep harping on the subject of performance management, the other risk for me is that employees may actually be, they may not be given the worth of their work to the employer. What I mean by that is this, an employee actually, depending on the unit of measure, if the unit of measure is time, if you don't have clear outcomes and what you're just measuring is the person is available to work, that means probably they could take up another job. And in other words, that means you're not getting the full import of that person being an FTE in your organization. And another risk is that you have employees that are very disconnected, and I talked about that, very disconnected from each other. They are just going through the motions and doing the work. Again, the mitigation is by ensuring that you have intentional connections among staff. And I could go down and down and down the list, but I will stop there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ma'am. And again, you talked about the part where some employees could actually be disconnected. How do we resolve this issue of people keeping a job and at the same time working for another organization which wasn't part of the initial contract? We understand that the gig economy, it's at the other part of the world, it's in place. But I was having a conversation with a young lady that works in a tech company, and I was surprised. I said, "Whoa, yeah, are you still in Nigeria? I thought you would have jackpot migrated by now." And then she said to me, "Oh, Stella, all this jackpot thing is not for everybody. What I want to do now, is if I'm working with my organization and have the opportunity of working with another organization remotely somewhere in Canada or US. So how do we manage this allowing them to work remotely and at the same time managing them, preventing them from working with another organization, which is not, there's conflict of interest. How do we manage that?"
So there are a couple of things here, Stella. There's a bit around what did the employee sign up for? Did they sign up for outcomes or did they sign up for their time? Which is why I went to the unit of measure. So if they signed up for outcomes and the employees are really churning out the outcomes, then maybe, you don't have a right to query them on what they do with their spare time, unless the organization has agreements. Some organizations carry those agreements where you sign that you don't have other interests, outside work interests. So if employees sign up to that, then you can hold them to that. But if you don't sign up to that and the employee is really churning out the outcomes, actually you don't really you can't really hold an employee to what they do after hours, especially if you don't have an out of work form or compliance that you hold employees to. They may be able to do their gig. A lot of technology organizations actually are aware of the fact that tech talent get a lot of energy and ginger from being able to just get into this and get into that, and they design for it.
Whoa, okay. So my fellow HR colleagues, please, this session is a must. It's a must for every one of us, because so many times we all belong to different WhatsApp platforms, and people keep dropping it there. What do we do? Should we issue the person a query? Should we terminate contract? And So this session has been very, very enlightening. It's been very, very insightful. So I wish we could go on, ma'am. I wish we could go on and on. But unfortunately, we are going to be bringing this session to an end. We are mindful of the time. And so we're going to bring the session to an end. I want to say a very big thank you. Thank you on behalf of our Noble Institute. Thank you for that beautiful expose. Thank you for all you do for the Institute. And thank you once again.
Thank you, Stella. And I really want to appreciate the Institute for the opportunity given me. I don't take it for granted. Thank you.
You're most welcome, ma'am. All right. Without wasting more time, please, just like as an icebreaker, I want to really find out if this chat box is functioning, because I barely saw anything. Please, can you drop how has the session been for you? Can you please drop it on the chat box, please? Has the session been for you? Has it been? I can say for myself, it's been explosive. So drop on the chat box, please, while we prepare for the panel session.
It looks like there are questions in the Q&A box, not in the chat box.
Okay.
Yeah, there are questions.
Moderator.
Yeah.
Yes, we have quite a number of questions in the Q&A box.
Yeah, it's in Q&A, not in chat. Yeah.
Oh.
Yes. Thank you so much, Tolu.
Oh, fortunately, we won't be able to take these questions because
maybe we should take 2 or 3 questions from the Q&A box.
Let's see. Yes, I can now see people already dropping their comments. Let me see. Let me now think I'll now go from the back. Thank you for this. Yes, someone wanted to have the video. It will be, I think the yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay,
yes, please.
Now, don't release Tolu yet. Let's go to the Q&A box. If you can't see your Q&A box, the people here on ground should be able to assist you to answer at least 3 of the questions in the Q&A box. My IPP has a question in the Q&A box. Guys, I never get another job. So you must answer that question. So thank you very much.
All right, can somebody help me out? I have loads and loads of questions here because can somebody help me out with that particular question, please? Can't seem to see it.
Hello. The question is, somebody dropped too many. I'm so sorry. What are the early and emerging signs? Sorry, I'm so sorry. A lot of people have dropped questions, so it's just gone off. Okay, please, moderator, check your private chat. The question is there from the.
Okay. Thank you. What are the early? Okay, what are the early and emerging signs of misapplication of and the risk associated with hybrid work arrangements? How are the risks mitigated? By Wale Adediran.
Okay, so I think there are a couple of parts to that question, but I heard something that I want to respond to, which is early signs. As line managers, HR people, line managers, we notice when our employees actually start getting disengaged. So if you have a meeting and you are rarely hearing anything from some of your team members, if all the meetings you have, they cannot put on their video, if work that usually comes in is not coming in, if questions they would normally ask you. In fact, one of my previous employers, one of my managers had said to me, one of the ways in which you know someone is engaged is if they're constantly asking questions. Because the moment the person becomes disengaged and they're doing something else, actually they can't be bothered. So if someone is asking you questions, then they are engaged. The moment you notice that someone has stopped asking questions, then there's a problem. Also, I had read up research about managers being able to manage introverts during the pandemic, because apparently when you're having a call, the people that usually would talk and raise their hands are the ones that normally are quick to talk. They're not the introverts. And they were advising managers to actually ensure that they go to the corners of the room virtually to call out people, not because you want to call them out, but to make sure that they're actually pulling people out and ensuring that people are talking. So those are some of the ways in which I would pick if someone was not working. Another way is, of course, if you have regular check-ins with your team, which line managers should have. You know, appraiser can't wait until appraisal day. You should have regular check-ins. In those regular check-ins, actually, you should know whether or not this person is doing their work. In one of the organizations I once worked for, we actually gave remote work an experimental time. So we'll conduct the experiment for a period of time to see whether or not you carried on with work. And if work was not working, then actually we'll start to think whether you couldn't do hybrid and whether you needed to come back to work. So those are some of the things, my dear IPP, that I would suggest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we have another question here that says, one of the challenges for HR managers is how to track performance virtually. Can you help me out with a simple virtual tool that can be used by both line managers and direct reports?
So the truth is there are many virtual tools that can be used. Yeah? And I don't remember the names, but one of the things that organizations have done is to actually track work that's done on the computer. You know, they track the work at the back end, and it actually then produces a report. Microsoft Teams itself, Microsoft Suite itself can help in just positioning and reporting on what this person has spent their time doing. But I would say the real deal is, did you agree the goals, the KPIs for this person? That's the real deal. That's the real deal. Except you're saying maybe the person doesn't really have KPIs. And I think certain jobs like that are dependent on you and they don't have KPIs. But a number of jobs, if managers will take their time, a number of jobs have KPIs that you can measure. That's the real deal. What if someone is coming to work 5 days a week and they have nothing to show for it? I mean, because that's also possible. So the place you really want to go, which is why I said performance management for me is the emerging thing. What did you set as their goal? What were the milestones that you set, and is the person hitting their milestones? That should be the first thing before you start talking about, I want to track what you are doing during the day. Stella.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And there is another question, and that will be the last question. It says
fine.
that can hybrid be adopted in a military setting? That is the armed forces. Does the hybrid have a limitation?
Oh, hybrid has limitations. I said that severally actually during my presentation. It has limitations. I mean, if military is protecting, you know, the battalion, they're not going to do it virtually. But I'm sure, I am so sure that even in the military, there are certain parts, there are intellectual parts of working in the military that I think will subscribe to hybrid. But I mean, I'm not a subject matter expert in military matters. Unfortunately, I can't answer categorically.
Wow. Oh, it's so sad. It's so sad that we can no longer take any more questions. This has been very, very insightful. So sorry, we can't take any more questions because we have to move quickly to the panel session.
Thank you so much, Stella. Thank you.
You're most welcome. And then, so in no particular order, I would like to read the bio of the first panelist, Malam Nasiru Buji Salisu, MCIPM. So Malam Nasiru Salisu is the Assistant General Manager, Intelligence and Enforcement, Kano Electricity Distribution Company from 2016 till date. Prior to this, he was the head of administration and HR of the same company. He is a licensed and experienced HR professional with excellent track records in human capital management. As a senior management staff, he is highly skilled and possesses the abilities of working with the top management and the board of directors on strategic repositioning through a highly customized human capital development. With over 20 years in the Nigeria power sector, Nasiru's experience cuts across information technology, environment, human resources, and lately, loss reduction. He is also passionate about people empowerment through career development programs, poverty elevation through philanthropic activities, which has given meaning to the lives of several less privileged members of the society. Nasir holds a master's degrees and a postgraduate diploma in public policy and administration from the prestigious Bayero University, Kano, a postgraduate diploma in management from ATBU Bauchi, and a bachelor's degree in applied biology from the same Bayero University, Kano. Nasir Salisu is a full member of the Chartered Institute of the Personnel Management of Nigeria, where he has been serving actively in several capacities, especially at the state branch level, where he also served as Kano State Branch Chairman for 2 consecutive terms, which led to the receipt of several awards from the CIPM National Headquarters. Nasir is also a fellow of several professional bodies, such as Corporate Administrators and Secretaries Professional Institute of Nigeria, Chartered Institute of Human Capital Development of Nigeria, and he is also a recipient of several awards for many organizations and institutes. He has also been recently appointed as the Peace Ambassador by the Northern Nigeria Youth Peace Ambassadors. Nasir is also passionate about sports and sports development and is married with 4 beautiful daughters. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Malam Nasir. Yeah. Okay, now I'll be reading the profile of our next speaker, Dr. Emmanuel Okeleji. Emmanuel is a co-founder and the CEO at the Seamless HR, Africa's leading cloud HR and payroll technology company. A trained medical doctor, his work and entrepreneurial experiences span multiple industries, including technology, healthcare, education, and agriculture. Before Seamless HR, Emmanuel served on the founding team of Lifespan Healthcare Limited as Assistant Project Director on a large PE-funded hospital project, Evercare Hospital, Lagos. He has also previously had a brief stint at the investment banking division of Goldman Sachs, London. Emmanuel is a TEDx speaker and a frequent conference speaker, speaking often about the role of entrepreneurs in nation building and defining the future of Africa. Emmanuel studied medicine and surgery at the Obafemi Awolowo University, Nigeria. Previously, he practiced as a medical doctor in Lagos, Nigeria. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Dr. Okeleji to the podium. So now you both be allowed to have your intro for about 3 to 5 minutes each, and after which we start with the question and answers. So please, you can use the question and answer column of this platform. So Dr. Okeleji, you go first. Let's have your intro, please.
Thank you very much. And I want to just thank the CIPM for having me at this annual public lecture, such an august event. And I really did enjoy listening to the last speaker. And it's just a lot of important points that she touched on. And I'm sure that everyone attending this event are benefiting hugely from the knowledge that is shared. And I hope that the conversation we're going to have at this panel will also contribute to help, HR in Nigeria as we're thinking about the challenges of hybrid remote work. I hope to be able to engage more during the panel discussions and the conversations that will follow, but just a few thoughts that I wanted to touch on as part of the introduction is recently been, because we at Seamless HR, beyond just building HR tools, we also have we run a startup that we're close to 200 employees right now. And we have specific experience as a technology company where we're seeing, we're facing the remote work reality uniquely as an employer myself. And for instance, we have teammates all over the world, literally. We have teammates in Australia, we have teammates, which is, depending on time of the year, 12 hours away from Lagos. So it's literally at the other end of the world. We have teammates in the US, we have teammates in Canada, we have teammates in the UK, we have teammates in places like Romania, all over the world, in India. And we've uniquely faced this. So we have like people are talking about the Japa syndrome, if you like. And so some of our staff have left the country, but they've continued to work with us. So there is a lot of lessons and experience that we're also learned, just from transitioning the company to a fully remote business with a bit of on-premise work from time to time, but we're largely remote. Happy to share some insights wrestling with that. We, for instance, of course, also have offices now in other countries, such that, even just playing with time zones around getting meetings to happen. There's a lot that I'm happy to share on that. And on the other side is something that, again, the last speaker touched on, which some like a polygamous work relationship where you have, and this is very big in tech, where you have people working in more than one company. And it's happening everywhere. I have people in the US who work in 3 companies, in the US, full-time jobs in 3 companies. And there's that angle that faces us as well, as a tech company. And then on the third side is we building tools for businesses to survive in the new world. And the requests that we get from customers in terms of functionalities, changes, features that they want on our products to be able to deal with the reality of remote work and hybrid work. So for instance, we've seen an uptick in people requesting for monitoring tools so that we can sort of like know what people are doing with their computers. Our view about that, just to say, is that, and again, the last speaker touched on it so beautifully. It's not sustainable to track time. Outcomes are probably more sustainable to track. So yeah, of course, there's time tracking software. We have time and attendance software. But in white collar work, we found that outcomes are actually more important to track. And conversations around how do we make sure we can track outcomes? What becomes outcomes? It's incomes that, quote unquote, incoming that becomes outcoming. And the ability to make sure that organizations can set those goals clearly and more take, smart goal setting more actively to be able to lead to outcomes and tools to make sure that those outcomes are measured is more sustainable than trying to mark time. People work on their phones. Are you going to track time on their phones? Are you going to track time on their computers? A lot of people go do a lot of work for the company that is face-to-face, you know, outside, not on a computer. So it's actually just quite a struggle. However, there are tools that do that already. It's just that it's very hard to really measure work that way. So I'm hoping that the conversations during the panel discussion allows us to touch on these issues in some more depth. But those are some of the angles that I'm looking at this topic from, and happy to share experiences from those angles, and how those conversations are transitioning, or how we're learning. Like, again, the last speaker said, it's a learning journey for everyone. No one has ever been here before. But I think CIPM is taking leadership in putting this front and center and having a global conversation about it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Okele. So, Malam Nasiru, can we have your intro for the next 3 minutes, please?
I think he's having network issues. He was on, but I think he's been booted out. Let's just hold on a while. Continue with Dr. Okele.
Yeah, I was just looking at the questions that's being dropped at the moment. So being a CEO, there's a question already for you from one of the delegates. They said, how can CEOs manage the impacts caused by mass migration or the Japa syndrome? How have you been able to manage it? You said,
I can speak to how we've been able to, how we're dealing with it on a number of levels, really practical. And this is not textbook stuff. This is just real practical. We're in a sector, interestingly, my life straddles two sectors where there's a lot of this going on, healthcare and technology. So Nigerian doctors are leaving the country in droves. And basically because there's a push and a pull, whatever is happening in Nigeria is making things more difficult for people to stay here. And there are countries that are actively hiring from Nigeria. So these two things are happening at the same time. So there are a number of ways that we've dealt with it. One is we've historically invested in culture. So to let's say we have a 70-page culture deck that we did in 2018 or something. So it wasn't like just when the pandemic started that we started getting serious about culture. And that 70-page culture deck is wired into everything we do in the organization. We've tried to build a really, really good company that is good to employees, that is respectful to employees, that employees would love to work in. And that has really helped because many people just love to work in the company. And we've seen many cases where people have left Nigeria, maybe because their spouse, went to do a master's degree in the UK or something, and they've remained working for Nigeria. So we have people in Canada, people in the US, people in the UK who were working with us here in Nigeria and continue to work with us even when they've left Nigeria. That happens, And when those kind of things happen, as part of our culture, we also are responsible. So what we do is we change those people's salaries to USD, to US dollars. We increase their salaries for cost of living adjustments when they leave Nigeria, especially if those people are critical to the company. And so that way we've been able to keep some talent. It's costing us way more, especially given the exchange rates and all of that. But talent is critical, and losing your leaders, losing key talent will cost even more. So that's something that we've been in. So culture, and by extension, just being responsible and following those employees to wherever they go. And so that's something we've done. Another thing that we've done is and not every company can do this, but a lot of tech companies can, and many companies can still do it. So we have something called an employee stock option plan. So we've also made employees co-owners of the company. We've created a significant part of the shares of the company, which we have rolled out in an employee stock option plan to our employees. So employees actually own part of Seamless HR, and all of the employees that own about 60% of our employees today, and hopefully all our employees, we have company shares that are significant. This would mean that they themselves can see how their personal wealth is improved by the work that we're doing in the company. I feel that to some extent that's also helped to keep employees retained in the company. So those are sort of the three things that we've done. Hopefully, as the company becomes able to afford more, I actually think that in the next 2 years, we'll come to a point where people can choose to, because we have an office in Kenya, we have an office in South Africa now that's just opening, and we might be setting up an office in Zanzibar as well. So we hope that in the next 2 years, we can have some quote unquote egalitarianism with pay, where people can easily move from, like if you want to leave Nigeria, you can go to the South African office and work from South Africa, and you'll be paid cost of living in South Africa. And we can afford that at scale and make it just open for everybody to be able to work wherever they want to work. And payroll will be adjusted to be able to support them to live wherever they want to live. Now, that's a really, really complex reality. But if we're going to be able to survive with tech talent in the 21st century and be competitive and build tools that can compete with companies elsewhere in the world, we're going to have to figure out a way to do those things. I think final point is that we also have to figure out a way to make money to be able to pay this kind of high bills, because this is like, we make money only from Nigeria in Naira, our income is depreciating every time and our expenses are exposed in dollars. So I think that the good part of this thing is forcing institutions in Nigeria like ours that have the capacity to internationalize, to try to figure out how to make money outside Nigeria, to be able to sustain this kind of expenses that are coming up because of the brain drain.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for those practical tips. Like you said earlier, this is not a textbook answer to the questions. These are practical tips. These are tips that you have used over and over and over again, and it has been successful for you. All right. Can we have Malam Nasir? Is it back on now? Malam Nasir, if you're back, can we have your intro before we go ahead with the questions?
Yes, madam. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Can you please hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Yeah, apologies to everyone there. I had some network challenges, which has been bothering me, but I've been with you right from the beginning of the program. It's my honor to be with you. All protocols duly observed. Without wasting much time, I would like to say myself, I work in the electricity sector. And of course, the topic is, of course, applicable to virtually most of the sectors. But we came to realize that there are some aspects of the job which definitely, for one to make some impact, needs a lot of investment. For example, during the pandemic, we had a lot of way to try to resolve some of faults that we have, especially on the technical side, considering the fact that most of the distribution companies in Nigeria, the network are not all the way standard. So, of course, some can easily maybe metamorphose to be treated in the hybrid world. For example, the sales aspect is even much easier to blend, but technically, because of the nature, it's not so easy. Now, concerning the technical aspect, in trying to ensure that there is flow of electricity from the substations down to the homes or offices of the customers, in order to be sure that things happen, in most of the situations, one has to be there physically. For example, when there are faults on the line, we do not have what it takes to clear the faults remotely. One has to be there. Of course, if not even taken, it could be very, very dangerous. It could lead to lives and property as well. Well, on the commercial aspect, that is where possibly some things could be done, but the nature of the environment also matters a lot. The environment we are working in, a lot of people are not educated, and a lot of people are not uh, do not even know anything to do in businesses. So it makes life more difficult. Of course, in some parts of the business franchise, it's much easier. For example, in the cities, in the GRAs where people are educated, they are learned, of course, they try to use all the payment channels, and that makes work much easier. But however, in trying to trace faults and clear them, the network or the connectivity currently we are using warrants somebody has to be there practically to ensure there is that connectivity, because you know electricity is something that so long as the connectivity is not 100%, at least from the transformer or the substation down to the house where a customer will see the light and use it, of course, the business is as good as failed. So I think that's the first part I would like to say. I hope I'm being heard, please.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Let me just share. Let me just share some little experience during that period. For example, when the pandemic started, we had a lot of challenges. The management had to inform the staff to stay away, to stay at home, but all the customers, they need light in their houses. So it's like a serious clash. You ask the linesmen, the tradesmen to be at home, but people are at home. That is the time when they need light the most. So definitely you have to do something about that. And I came to realize that it's something that is possible. It's not impossible, because the nature of the connectivity in some parts of the world, maybe in some advanced countries, it's very, very easy to carry out those activities. For example, those who are operating on SCADA, those operating on SCADA remotely, you'll be able to diagnose the problem on the line. You'll be able to see clearly what is happening on the line. And of course, you can trace the problem, you can correct the problem. Unlike where we have no connectivity, we don't, you cannot even talk to the network. You can approximately, you cannot do that. You have to be there in person. For example, most of the networks in Nigeria currently, as I know, is something like that. Maybe in some countries where I saw, even let's say in India, I was privileged to be at Data Power India. Of course, I have seen where they identify the faults remotely, they correct the faults remotely, but we cannot do it here. Even in terms of in the aspect of the sales, where most of our customers rely on physical cash to make transactions, it's also another thing extremely difficult. So the pandemic period become a very difficult period for all of us. We cannot ensure connectivity. We cannot our revenues are being channeled appropriately. So definitely we had to come out from our houses, maybe take all the precautions. We had to come out to ensure the business continues. Otherwise, the business would have simply died. However, on some aspects of the job, I am in the enforcement unit. Now, in the enforcement unit, we try to ensure that people don't tamper with the network, don't steal energy. So, in that aspect, the connectivity also is able to identify who is trying to tamper with the network. We do not have most of these connectivities currently in most of the discourse that I know. from my little experience, I know about 5 to 6 distribution companies in Nigeria that have a lot of the technology. The good of it is that we are just on those aspects. We're trying to see how we could do that in some of these distribution companies. They've started trying to come up with SCADA system, and they've started to come up with AMR, where someone can remotely know what is happening in a certain company or in a certain house, so long as the meters are complete.
Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you very much, Madam.
Okay, so you can. I'm having an echo. So with one of the speaker, it's been seamless. Going hybrid, remote. Going hybrid. Why for the other speaker? I'm having echo. Please, can somebody? All right. So, Malam Nasir. So going by the theme of today's lecture, upskilling for digital acceleration. Yes, you've shared some of the challenges and the limitations we're having and having to cope with the whole the now of work. So what steps have you taken in upskilling your workforce in preparation for the now of work? So what are the steps you've taken to upskill them, in the digital space that we currently find ourselves?
Okay, but can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Did you hear me?
Yeah, I had part of the question, which is concerning how we are trying to upskill our employees. I think that's the question, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly. So what is happening, as I said, currently, you can upskill your employees on the new normal, but definitely you have to invest a lot on the network. You have to invest a lot on the network. As at now, most of the network we are having in most of the distribution companies, you cannot even communicate. You cannot communicate with the network. Remotely, you may not know where there is a fault. So it means we have to ensure that we upgrade the network first. And that is exactly the stage we are in. Most of these projects, like if you're trying to upgrade the network to ensure connectivity, that comes along with sort of trainings in which you will now upskill your employees to now understand that this particular challenge that we normally have on the network is something that can be addressed even from your living room. You can stay there and address it. For example, by the time we conclude on our project, that is automated. Maybe for some of the engineers there, they know what I'm talking about. You will be able, from the comfort of your room, to see what is exactly happening a meter inside a company that is maybe like 100 or 200 kilometers away. You will be able to see it. You will be able to identify the exact time when somebody is trying maybe to tamper with the meter. You will be able to see it. And of course, you will be able to communicate and send a message to some of your staff that will go there physically, maybe to alert the people on what they are doing. For example, that is from maybe from the intelligence aspect. Now, the same thing with trying to trace the problem. If there is connectivity or there is a line cut, wire has cut on the ground, of course, with the little investment that we are working on now, you will be able to know that at exactly so location, maybe in Kano, I have a wire cut. Right now, it is on the ground. And that tells you the emergency aspect of the job. it simply tells you that we have a lot of problem. We have a problem there. There is a live wire right now on the ground. Apart from losses, it is also capable of maybe leading to death. And of course, a lot of losses of the property. It can lead to fire outbreak. It can lead to maybe a child is person may decide to touch it as something maybe to play with. So definitely we are now in the investment aspect, especially for the network. We are investing seriously on the network, and that will really help us. That will be the turning stone in the whole business, because by the time you are able to communicate with the network remotely, then you have control over the network. Otherwise, you do not have control. It means you are blind, whatever is happening there. The network doesn't know network unless somebody decides to inform you, maybe via phone or this and that. Of course, the first thing that we are doing now is the investment. And we have seen it clearly that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And we all know the situation we are in the country. And of course, we're trying to improve the technology. The technological improvement is not an option. It's just a must. We have to invest there, and that is exactly what we're doing, including the sales aspect. The sales aspect is even much more easier currently. It's much more easier because all the channels are there and people are complying largely on the sales aspect. While on the other aspect, which has to do with losses of the company, that is what entails the intelligence aspect of trying to see who are those trying to steal from the network. And that one also is a special investment that one has to do. And of course, we are doing the good side of it, that a lot of companies, not just mine, which is electricity, a lot of companies have now come to realize that without this investment, the business is going nowhere. The people who are bent on trying to steal from the network, of course, they are doing it and they are not willing to stop it. Because now, if I may share this, we have been able to trace a lot of companies that have been doing that. Some of these companies that we saw from our records were stealing energy worth more than 100 million in a month. And of course, we discovered some of them maybe by even trying some of this technology. And of course, it's given us a lot of results. So we have now concluded, thank God, management understood and is on the same page with us, the staff, that we can't do this thing physically. We must imbibe the technology. And of course, by so doing, we get the results. So long as we continue with the investment, the people will now be educated, and of course, the life will no longer be the same. There will definitely be a lot of improvement. Efficiency will be much higher. Losses will be definitely reduced to the barest minimum. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Malam Nasir. Yes, you have shared with us how you've been able to leverage technology in redefining your work process, which is very laudable considering the peculiar nature of your industry. So let's go to Dr. Emmanuel. I have a question here that says the CEO Seamless HR talked about having teams all over the world. What is the spread of your teams in Nigeria? As we noticed that Seamless HR is not in the nation's capital of Abuja.
Thank you. So I saw that question as well. So we do have staff in Abuja, and I was speaking to having staff in different places in the world, not offices in different places in the world as yet. We do have an office in Lagos, and with the advantage of remote work, we're able to sell from Lagos to anywhere in the country. We have staff in Abuja, we have staff in Ibadan, we have staff all over Nigeria. I think one of the advantages of remote work is that people can now live in places with less commute time than Lagos comfortably. So literally we have staff who've never been to the office before and worked in the office for a year or more because they live in Akure, in Ondo State or somewhere, Osun State or, in the north as well. So we do have staff all over the country as well. We don't really tell staff where to leave. They usually can leave anywhere they want. But in terms of offices, there's really no compelling reasons to be paying rent for more offices, given that people are not even going to the office. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Okay, so I have another question here for you, which says that as a digital organization that works remotely, how easy has it been putting data together, and how sure are you that the data are objective?
Yeah, I mean, we're sort of like, our case is a little bit extreme, being that we're a technology company ourselves. We use a tool, for instance, called Notion in Seamless HR. The company is run, like I was actually, I ran into folks who work in Notion a couple of weeks ago in the US. And I was joking to them that if Notion collapses, our company will collapse, because everything that we do is documented on Notion. So we're a company driven by documentation. Every team, we share documents, everything is documented. That's really helped because, people can always read and understand what's going on. Meetings are documented, work is documented, standard operating procedures are documented, product documentation happens. So we use Notion a lot. Collaboration happens on Notion, calendar, everything. So we use Notion. We use other tools. We use Jira. Again, we're a technology company and we invest a lot in tools. We also sell tools. We build tools. So we invest more than the average in tools. I think that because all these things are remote, being on premise from a data standpoint doesn't change anything. We're on the cloud. We're a cloud-based software company. In fact, on-premise is riskier, for data, generating power, making sure that servers are up, just doesn't work in the 21st century. And so everything is on the cloud and people can be anywhere and access everything from anywhere. Like I said, I'd say, I don't know the percentage offhand, but I believe at least maybe 40% of people who work in Seamless HR have never been to the office before. Some people still go to the office. We do have an office in Lagos. A lot of people still go to the office, but it's really not a prerequisite that we're enforcing on anybody. Yeah. And just if you may, I wanted to just say a few points about the upskilling question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I think that just contributing to that conversation is that a number of things. Number one is we do have to come to terms with the fact that this is a new world and we have to equip our employees to understand. We have to help them to transition their mindsets, and training is more of helping people's mindsets, right? So companies have to be responsible, which just I assume that people are going to change and become people who've worked, come to the office every day for 30 years or 20 years, will just suddenly now get used to working from home. And I think that companies have to take responsibility for that journey of, for instance, change management training for all employees in the company to understand the realities of remote work and what that means to their life. Investing in training managers, investing in the training infrastructure that helps goal setting to be better in the organization, because we're now literally forced to be measuring outcomes just more than just attendance. So we also then have to train the performance management process to be able to do that. That means training managers to set SMART goals, training direct reports to be able to also work with goals and to be more outcome oriented. I think that that's something as we go into a new year that companies should keep in mind, that training is required to actually help people to make that transition. It's not going to be natural. This remote work, we just hired a staff who's worked in banking for 15 years, and he joined us this week. And I was chatting with him 2 days ago, and he was saying to me, it looks like magic to him, because luckily for him, he lives like 5 minutes walking distance from our office. And on his first day of resumption in Seamless, he was working from home. He didn't come to the office. And whereas the bank where he was working before, he would go 3 hours to the bank in the morning, 3 hours back in the evening. So he spent 6 hours on the road every day. And so joining Seamless, in fact, he's a very senior person in the bank. One of the reasons why we could easily hire him off the bank is because of the time he spends on the road going to the bank versus, living just next door to the office and not even coming to the office if he doesn't want to. But we measure his work. He gets the job done. He will get the job done. So I think that is also necessary for us to be competitive as companies, to invest in this transition to remote hybrid work by investing in L&D.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for throwing more light on that question. So, Malam Nasir, this is going to you right now. I can tell that from the peculiar nature of your industry. Okay, is there any chance of some roles going hybrid in the nearest future? We're meant to understand that yes, it's not all roles that would go remote or hybrid, but are you nursing probably the idea of going hybrid for some roles in your particular organization anytime soon?
Sorry, I missed part of the question. The question for me, please.
Yes, sir. The question is for you. Yes,
exactly. Exactly as I had part of the questions, and I think maybe I can respond on that. We are looking at the various job now. The intelligence aspect, as we call it, intelligence and enforcement, that's trying to reduce, especially that which comes from human activities like energy theft. That's clearly we can easily work on that so long as we standardize the network. So the different aspects and try to see which ones are the low-hanging fruits, which ones are the easiest that we can easily start with. And of course, investments are being channeled directly. For the other aspect, like this, which definitely requires a lot of investment, maybe that is the one that will come at a later stage. But as at now, other aspects of the job, for example, the HR, the sales, and this intelligence aspect, a lot of investment is being carried out now on those aspects of the job, and we are sure because we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. We are seeing there is every possibility that we have a chance of improving the work through that. I can recall, like in one of these years, in 2019, for example, when we started the issue of this intelligence and enforcement, the unit alone was able to gather more than 1 billion naira loss of revenue. That is from those people stealing energy who were discovered and of course were penalized. So that gives us the sense that, so if we can go ahead with this investment on this aspect of the job, we'll be able to save the energy. And of course, anybody who is stealing will also be able to track the person and penalize the person. By so doing, he may decide to even stop that act. So we have really understood that the investment, although money is not easy to come by, but definitely we have to do whatever it takes to ensure that at least we start gradually. None of these companies has a lot of money to invest, maybe just in one day. But of course, we are looking at every possibility. these are companies that are owned by people now. They have to make the possible investment to ensure that they improve the work, because the return on investment is sooner than later. Of course, there are some aspects of the processes that when you do improvement, when you improve the process today, even tomorrow, you will see, of course, the difference. It's not a waste, but definitely it's not easy and requires a lot of investment. I don't know whether I've been able to address the issue.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Malam Nasir. Yes. Having said, so we have one more question for Dr. Kelechi, then you'll both be having your last summary, just 60 seconds close out. So Dr. Kelechi, we hear of digital acceleration and there is digital transformation. Can you just share light between both of them? So are they used interchangeably, or at what points do we embrace digital transformation, and at what points should we start embracing digital acceleration?
Thank you. I think that those two things are happening at the same time in Africa, especially because and the pandemic has actually forced many organizations to take digital more seriously. Historically, there's been less technology in Africa compared to other parts of the world, and many organizations have survived, have managed to be ongoing concerns without a lot of digital work or technology infused into their work. Like the good man was saying just now about leveraging technology now in the power sector to be able to track things remotely. That wasn't a thing that was as necessary as it is now before. But I think it's a good thing, overall, that the world is now taking technology more serious. And that's where digital transformation is now becoming more of a big deal for organizations. Of course, transformation is happening at the same time as acceleration for companies who already are digitally inclined and now have to step up that work and acquire technology and use technology and consume technology at a faster pace. So in my mind, there are two things that can be happening at the same time within an organization, where we're transforming different parts of our businesses that used to be analog to digital, and accelerating parts of the business that was previously digital, but also making them more modern or more cutting edge, if you like. I think that one of the things that will continue to be a challenge for us in Africa is affordability. Can we afford to pay for technology? Because our markets are still small, and you have to be able to make the money required to be able to invest in technology and to be able to leverage the opportunities that digital acceleration or transformation offer to businesses.
Thank you very much. So unfortunately, that'll be all we'll be taking. So we'll just have you do just your last 60 seconds wrap up.
Thank you.
60 seconds wrap up. Just
So what I'd like to close with is just a challenge. I actually see that, in the midst of the doom and gloom that Japa and all these things, I don't know how that word is. I think I have to look for another, that mass migration has cost in Nigeria, that they colloquially call Japa. I see an opportunity. I actually think it's a challenge in our educational sector. Fortunately, universities have been on strike for the last 7 months or more, but it's a challenge that we must now take educating. There's still so many Nigerians. The number of Nigerians living actually is very few. Compared to the number of Nigerians that there are, I doubt that over 1 million Nigerians have left in the last 3 years. And there's 200 million of us. I think that it's a challenge on the educational sector to begin to train more Nigerians. The banks are losing staff and their systems are challenged because talented staff are leaving. Why don't we start training more people? There are more 16-year-olds that are born every day who want.
Okay.
And rather than, ask for 9 months can we start training more people to feed our workforce? I think that's a challenge I'll leave with nation builders, and an area where I think there's opportunity.
Thank you very much. So, Malam Nasir, please, let's keep it within 60 seconds, as we are trying to stick to time. Just your closing in 60 seconds, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. One thing that we must understand, we in this part of the development, because we cannot develop electricity. For example, let me talk about my sector. The investment is huge. Is almost nowhere to be found. With some tool, we are alive and successful. If at all, we are trying to build the country, the kind of environment that our children will even survive and say, thank you, my dad. Easier. We must, Rome is not built in a day. We must start doing electricity is a must. Investment, more to ensure that the country improves. Most sense of belonging that we have contributed toward development of the nation, and we have something to leave for our children. Thank you, CIPM, for giving me the opportunity to share my little experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure everyone that has joined the call and are still here up until this time, you all agree with me that this has been very, very enlightening. Yeah, so want to now call on the Vice President of the CIPM, Mr. Henry Onwako, MCIPM, to please do us the honors of giving the closing remarks. Mr. Henry. Is he on the call?
Yes, I am. Confirm you can hear me now.
Loud and clear.
Thank you so much. My system did a quick restart, so apologies. Thankfully, I'm just back in just in time. And thank you so much to everyone. I think I want to start with really showing great appreciation to, at peak time, we had over 850 persons logged on to this program. And really, our huge thanks go to all of you for your time. I think we've had a great time today. In the course of the discussions, let me start with, first of all, again, Mr. President and Chairman of the Governing Council. The National Treasurer is also here. The Registrar, thank you so much. And the IPP is also here. So I was just saying that at the peak of the program, we had over 850 persons logged on. And of course, we appreciate that. While having the discourse today, though we're looking at hybrid work, and like Dr. Kuleji said in the course of it, we couldn't go away from the JACPA syndrome. JACPA kept coming up, kept coming up. So one can easily see the connect between those two and what it has. While not taking too much time around what has been said already, but I just want to accentuate that point he made, that there are some things we can try to solve. So we'll do the best we can in providing opportunities for hybrid work, as it were. The reality, though, is that there are certain economic situations in Nigeria that will make people leave. And because people leave, what do we do to ensure that we have a good resource pipeline to fill in? So the opportunities of our 200 million people is great strength for us, and we can continue to make use of that. I just want to thank very, very strongly Dr. Emmanuel Okeleji for the very strong insight that he brought in. primarily from the private sector and from the CEO's point of view. Of course, huge thanks also to Malam Nasir from the public sector and from a parastatal, as it were. And of course, again, to Tolu Ajiri, we've always relied on you on times like this, and thank you really for delivering once again. Just before I let us go, I'd like to say that this is one of our programs, of course, in the series. Just upcoming are two very, very great programs I'd like us to take note of. One of them is the International Academic Conference that has been put together again by CIPM. And for us, it's what we call where the town meets the gown, where the town meets the gown. In all of the universities and academic institutions, there's a lot happening around labor, around human resources. And as practitioners, we're doing what we can in a practical sense. How do we merge these things to make more sense to help both parties? So this International Academic Conference is coming up in Ibadan, Leeds City University to be precise, 23rd and 24th of November. So we check the CIPM website to see more details on that. Of course, the biggest is our flagship, the 54th International Conference and Exhibition. That comes up from the 17th of October in the Garden City of Port Harcourt, where I'm speaking from. That's where it's taking place. So of course, we want to remind all our members, 850 who are here today, and all the others who are connected in some way or the other. Let's log on to this relevant websites. Let us register for the conference. It's taking place here in the Garden City of Port Harcourt, 17th through 21st of October. Once again, to the President and Chairman of Council, to all leaders in the House, and to everyone who has connected today, see you at the next public lecture, where we will once again deliver value with respect to our members. Thank you very much, and thanks, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much, our able and amiable Vice President. So, as we said earlier, it's so sad that every good thing have to come to an end at some point. Yeah. So we want to invite now the Chairman, Institutional Development Committee of the CIPM, in person of Mrs. Olubusola Abidakun, MCIPM, to do us the honor of giving us the vote of thanks.
Mrs. Abidakun is going to say thank you to everyone. Just keep the focus on her. Just keep the focus on her. No, keep the focus on her. Mine is just on the sideline. That as we go on, as we all log out from this session and go back home, I just want us to take a few things with us. Remember what Tolu said in our closing remarks. HR is not for HR's sake. That we are in that premises, we are in that virtual space because there is a business. I run a business, and I can tell you, even when you want to japa, please japa responsibly. Please japa responsibly. Please. And let us take that away from this program. Also, don't forget, whatever we do, it is the receiver of the value that judges the value. Value is judged by the receiver, not the giver. You don't just run around. At the end of the day, it comes to the bottom line. I just want us to take note of that. And I also love what Tolu showed. That's about her last slide. Wherever the echo is coming from, I am not connected online, so it's not from me. So the internal service value chain, whatever we do as an organization must end in customer satisfaction. It must end in customer satisfaction. It must end in repeat purchase. It must end in business continuity. I appeal to us, my HR colleagues, let us be business focused. And lastly, on a very, very familiar note, I want to say thank you, Emmanuel Okeleji. Thank you very much for, you see, each time I hear that he used to be a medical doctor and the guy has now jackpot into some money-making businesses. I'm always smiling. Nice to see your face again, my brother. And I was telling people around here that we will send you our invoice for the commercials. But I now said, well, on a second thought, you have been a worthy partner over the years. We may overlook that. All you need to do is you will let us keep on partnering. Thank you very much, each and every one of us. I want to say thank you once again. Just like the Vice President has said, the takeaway should not be lost on us. Everyone on this call and those who have logged out, we want to say thank you. We appreciate you so much. Mrs. Abidakun, you can now mention everybody as I've seen in your notes. I don't have that capacity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my president. And so my job is usually very simple because my leaders and principals have done a lot. But then I say, thank you very much to the president and chairman of the Governing Council, Mr. Olusegun Mojid, FCIPM. I say thank you to the vice president, my dear brother, Mr. Henry Unuakpo, MCIPM. I was going to call you a doctor. The national treasurer, Mrs. Chidima Obiejesi, MCIPM, whom we fondly call Mama Olowo, that is the carrier of the money. The immediate past president, a darling, Mr. Wale Adediran, FCIPM. The registrar and chief executive officer, Ms. Oluwatoyin Naiwo, FCIPM. All past presidents present, the governing council members, our guest speaker, Mrs. Tolu Lope Agiri. I hope my brother is right there beside you. MCIPM, Deputy Director and Head, Human Resource International Civil Aviation Organization. Esteemed panelist, Malam Nasir Salisu, MCIPM. Dr. Emmanuel Okeleji, you've been well introduced. The Chief CEO, Seamless HR. Distinguished fellows of this unique institute, esteemed members of the institute, dedicated members of the Institutional Development Committee, ably led by my good self, and my team members, whom I would like to name, the Vice Chairman, Mr. Sonny Mohammed, committee members, Mrs. Tonyo Yeneye, Tonye Modi, Oluwaseun Olayonju, Konye Umba, Mr. Abu Kadir, Mr. Rowolo, my campus mate in Alausa, Mrs. Ogochukwu Ebonu, Madam Inkiru of CIPM, Mrs. Bola Onime, Mr. Femi Adeyeye. I say thank you to you. And without the superb high-flying technical gurus, Mr. Shola Ajibola, Mr. Sheyi Omolere, my colleagues in the Lagos State government, well, let me blow my trumpet, the best public service in Nigeria, Lagos State government, I say thank you. My colleagues in other public and private sectors, ladies and gentlemen, my moderator, darling Stella Obialo, I say thank you very much. I say thank you to the IT gurus, without whom the glitches would have been serious. I say thank you to every one of you, and do have a wonderful day. Thank you very much. Another one is in the pipeline. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. We can now say goodbye.
Unmute yourself.
Let us meet in Port Harcourt.
We are meeting in Port Harcourt for Bole.
Port Harcourt,
Yes.
go Bamo. Let's go and eat some
Unmute
boli.
yourselves
Some
and
boli
say
and
hello.
fish.
Yes, sir.
Port Harcourt
Unmute
is going
yourselves.
to be grand.
Yes.
Port Harcourt
Yes,
is going to be
sir.
grand. Let's come and learn.
Let's come and unwind.
Work-life balance. We can hear you.
Two speakers cannot be on at the same time. Two cannot.
So we can see here, you can So once again. Everybody. Yeah. I was just thinking that the engineers or the producers, the back room people will have given us some boogalicious music. CPC chair, come and give us some good news.